So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the argument. We did a prompt last week, and I want to go over some tips before we move on to our next writing assignment. All right, so I know you all want to earn a 7, 8, or a 9, so these tips will hopefully propel you in the right direction. Some of the things I noticed, one is you've got to use a consistent tense. If you start in first person, you need to continue in first person. Likewise, if you're writing in third person, you have to maintain third person. You need to successfully make an argument and then support it with specific, detailed, and appropriate examples. I think a lot of people, this was probably one of the biggest errors. You were very general, so we need to get you specifically laying out your argument using examples. The best advice I can give you is to show with examples. Don't tell about the examples, give the actual examples. You need to have mostly correct grammar and syntax. You can make a few errors. And for the 7, 8, or 9, you have to have a sense of style. That's really important. And it has to flow from start to finish. There should be some cohesion. And then if you notice, you need to have 500 or more words. So I think this is another area that we need to work on. So I talked to you the other day that there is something called the length bias. And so everybody, let's take a look at your paper. Count 3 to 5 lines, how many you have on the line. Some people get 7 words, some people 10 words, some people 11. When I do a word count, I just pick 3 random lines. All right, average that. So let's say your average is 8. Now count the number of lines that you get on the page. So perhaps you get 30 lines to a page. So, 30 times 8 is 240 front and back. That is a little bit less than 500 words if you're consistent. So you should be shooting for at least 500 words, and that's a quick and easy thing that you could do for next time around. All right, so you have a piece of paper in front of you that shows you how much you wrote in 40 minutes. So be aware of that and see if you can kind of up the word count for next go round. All right, so here's your prompt, and I wanted to just highlight a few things that I think we need to work on. So one of them, in this particular prompt, you had to know what the word conform meant, and you had to understand objective facts. So in 2001, the American Scholar published an excerpt from a talk given by English author Margaret Drabble. In her talk, Drabble claimed our desire to conform is greater than our respect for objective facts. Okay, the other part of the prompt, which I didn't go over, said, using appropriate evidence from your reading, observation, and or experience, write a carefully reasoned essay defending, challenging, or qualifying Drabble's assertion about conformity. Probably 90% of you agreed, but we had a few people who disagreed with her. All right, so first of all, what does conform mean? So conform means, to go with everybody else. So if you didn't understand our, collectively, it could be our students, it could be our humans, it could be our Americans, but you kind of needed to know what the our was, and then our desire to conform. We like to conform. All right, the second part is objective facts. And again, I think this is where some people, went a little off track. So objective facts are usually things that can be proven. So these are oranges. I think no one will debate that. But I love oranges. Now we're getting into emotions and feelings. All right, readings. Now this is really important. Hopefully this year we will add to your arsenal lots of scholarly reading, scientific studies, politics. That's a great thing to read. Classic or contemporary, critically acclaimed literature. That's really important. And you might want to start looking at the New Yorker or the Atlantic. Either of those are terrific magazines, long form journalism, but those are some of the things that we need you to be reading so that you become well read. And that's the stuff you should be citing in your papers. All right, and observations. Observations make you look sophisticated. I was particularly impressed with people who cited psychological studies. For example, there was something about people in the room and smoke came in through the vent, and No one got up and mentioned the smoke, and so the person who was the participant in this psychological study didn't do it either because he or she was conforming to the group. So things like that are really great observations. All right, experiences. A lot of you talked about typical teen drama, peer pressure, going to the mall. Let's try to avoid that in the future. So, travel is a great thing to write about, school related things, things that happen in a classroom, field trips, internships, jobs, life experiences. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so now let's get into some errors. So the prompt is the prompt. Just get to writing. Try a 3 sentence introduction, and I'm going to show you a model of that in a minute. All right, errors. A couple of people kind of kept rewriting the prompt. Or compared the prompt to another quote that was similar to the prompt, or commented on the prompt, or complimented the prompt. So just get to the writing. All right, here is an introduction in just 2 sentences. So this is one that I wrote. I restated some of the information from the prompt. So English author Margaret Drabble's quote about conformity reflects humanity's tendency to go along with authority rather than stand up to the status quo, especially when backed by science or reason. All right, so that's, my opening sentence. All right, now my second sentence, this is my thesis. The hysteria of the female minor characters in Arthur Miller's The Crucible, the passionate misunderstanding of contemporary anti-vaccination advocates, and the men in my village when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the 1980s all reflect Drabble's claim representing both insidious peer pressure and a lack of understanding of science and general knowledge. Okay, now this is a three-pronged thesis. You could see that I'm going to write probably a 5 paragraph essay here, but you don't have to write a 5 paragraph essay. You can write a 4 paragraph essay. You can write a 6 paragraph essay. You're not married to the 5 paragraph essay, but this one I'd probably write a 5 paragraph essay. All right, so this would be my model body paragraph. So I have an opening sentence. Notice that I'm alternating with kind of text, like examples from the text, and then analysis. So I come to my conclusion, which is Miller's play reflects Drabble's assertion of narrow-sighted interpretation of sketchy laws and bogus evidence, standing in for reasoned intelligence and intellectual worldliness. That's a 213 sentence paragraph. Okay, that's only 8 sentences. So another thing you could work on is combining your sentences, lengthening your sentences, and also some sentence variety. Notice I have short sentences interspersed with longer sentences. Okay, so here's some more errors. Excellent, you want to maintain a consistent tense. I talked about staying in the same point of view. Don't speculate. A lot of you kind of went off the rails when you were saying, if you were going to fail a test, well, instead of making something up, why not use something that's real from your experience? And I want to talk to you a little bit about problems with agreement. If you're going to speak with one, the universal one, if one were to, that's actually singular. So you'd have to say, if one were to, he or she. That sounds very awkward. So I would just make it plural. If people were to, they would. Someone, notice I underline the word one, that's singular. So you can't use the word they, it has to be he or she. Each person, that's each single person, also requires he or she. Everyone, that's every single one, that's a singular pronoun that requires he or she. Overused pronouns. I would try to avoid pronouns as much as possible, especially when you're using multiple men or multiple women, because then your reader is going to get confused. So I would try to use proper names as much as possible. I saw some people write, they say that. Well, who is they? As a reader, initially I go to who is they? All right, so let's talk a little bit about diction. Okay, so we're looking for succinct, well-chosen diction. So avoid generalities, avoid overwriting. I always say use nickel words instead of quarter words. You can try a new vocabulary word, but if you launch it and it doesn't actually hit the target, it doesn't look very good. So try to use the words you know. Common errors, at this point you should be able to edit in time and edit out there, and your. It's remember a lot. The if you put it together as ALOT, that's not a word. So just make sure that you're doing common errors correctly. Okay, you probably have learned ethos, logos, pathos before. We're going to study this a little bit more when we get into persuasion, but make an appeal, make a persuasive appeal. So this particular prompt, since it was talking about objective facts, you could have gone to head, which would be logic. You could have used statistics, you could have used laws. Those that all refers to logic. Heart has to do with emotions, right? Pathos. And cred has to do with ethos or ethics. All right, here's some more errors. So excellence, these are students who could include imagery or, as I mentioned, persuasive appeals, specific examples, clever, interesting details, or academic things. All right, you're in a history class, you just finished reading a huge book called The People's History of the United States. Not too many people cited it. That was a perfect thing that you could have used. Although I did see a few people used Seabiscuit. Avoid cliches. Make sure that you're identifying people correctly. And again, avoid generalities. All right, so excellence, 4 to 6 paragraphs, 2 to 3 pages of dense, detailed prose. Some errors that I noticed: incorrect paragraphing. There were people that wrote one big, gigantic paragraph or no conclusion. See if you can even just get one sentence of a conclusion, but sort of wrap it up because your reader is in with you and your reader wants to know, how does this thing end? All right, excellence. So active voice, confident voice, original sense of style or tone. Have a tone, humorous, witty, sarcastic, bitter, nostalgic, something that makes your reader want to connect with you. Avoid passive voice. Avoid things that are formulaic. All right, so your 5 paragraph essay is formulaic, but you know what? I've seen some beautiful 5 paragraph essays before. Don't tell your reader what you're going to do. I'm going to persuade you, or I am going to make this argument, or next I will discuss. Now, when you're doing research, you actually use those terms, but when you're writing a formal argument or a formal essay for AP language, you really don't want to tell your reader what you're going to do. And make sure that you think about your audience at all times. So I'm the one who's reading this, and then eventually, an AP reader will read this in May. So make sure that you picture me reading your paper and write to me. All right, so we're looking for your unique style. The prose on the page should be natural and comfortable. All right, so we talked a little bit about not straddling the fence. Make sure that you have an argument, that your argument is not overly simplistic, and that you don't straddle the fence. You need to take a side. And your prose should be very smooth flowing, and you're arguing the case without any kind of awkwardness. So I like to read really good, well crafted sentences. Okay, so next go round, let's see if we can work on the length. Let's see if we can write within that time frame of 40 minutes and maybe wrap up your paper with about 2 to 3 minutes to spare so you can go back over and make some corrections. And see if you can work on adding in a little bit of style and tone.